Greenwood Lake, a world away from a place called Belfast, Northern Ireland. And those kids, the kids running in the water and swimming, they're from Belfast. A far cry from the bleakness and the gulf of hatred that separates Catholic and Protestant.
I don't want to go home.
Why?
I don't know. I want to see my mother, but I don't want to go home.
Are you afraid sometimes at home?
Sometimes.
Why?
In case I get beat up or things, something like that.
Yeah. And what else can happen? Anything else that you think of?
Get shot, things like that.
Do you see lots of shooting at home?
Yeah.
Does it scare you?
Yeah, I guess so.
Why are they doing that at home?
I don't know. It's just, you're sort of just going back to a bloody place. A place where people get killed just for nothing.
6 weeks in America, swimming, and baseball and soccer, hills, trees, lake, friendship and peace. And then back to Belfast and the trouble. Bombing, shooting, endless death.
Hatred comes from suspicion and fear, and it is taught by the example of the parents, politicians, teach the people to hate.
In reality, a lot of these children are terribly frightened, terrified of the soldiers, and I think that this element of fear has been very much underplayed and underestimated.
What we are doing in Belfast is that we're rearing another generation of bigots who are learning to hate.
And if the both sides would get down on their knees and ask God to forgive them, and I hope and pray that Catholic mothers and Protestant mothers will realise that, because it's the children is the future.
I came here in 1962. When I arrived here, I was 17 years old, $20 in my pocket, barely able to write my name. I mean, I had worked in a farm before I came, and it really was the land of opportunity for me, anyhow. I had an opportunity to go back to school and get my high school diploma. Got my citizenship and became a police officer. And that was my dream.
In 1969, Dennis Mulcahy took an oath to protect and serve the citizens of New York. The young recruit from County Cork in Ireland would later become one of the NYPD's most decorated bomb disposal experts.
This is the neighborhood that I spent 20 years here in the bomb squad. And this is where I reported daily.
There were an endless number of threats to face in New York City. But Dennis's unique line of work meant he also took a professional interest in what was happening elsewhere in the world. And at that time, Ireland was never far from his thoughts.
Present! Home!
You'd read about and you'd hear about devices going off, you know, in Ireland, and you were always curious as to what kind of a device it was, you know, how it was set up, how it was meant to go.
Order! Home!
I was somewhat fascinated with explosives, and that's what led me to joining the bomb squad.
Detail, parade, ready!
There used to be a joke between bomb techs. When you cut a wire, you can hear it. But if you cut the wrong wire, you're never going to hear it.
The whole world sitting on
In the early 1970s, Belfast was rapidly becoming one of the most bombed cities in the world. The centuries-old conflict in Ireland was coming to a head. Northern Ireland was part of the United Kingdom, in which the Catholic nationalist minority were engaged in a civil rights struggle with the Protestant loyalist majority that had spiraled out of control into bloody violence.
Dozens, scores, perhaps hundreds of young Catholics, young nationalists decided to join the IRA, their rationale being the only way we are going to get equality is by using violence, by using weapons, by using guns and by using bombs.
Whatever about the rights and wrongs of the politics, it was a dangerous place to grow up.
When I was around 8 years old, there were two sports. One was football and the other one was riding.
The night that my father died, our house was petrol bombed.
This group kicked the door in, got him to say a prayer in the Roman Catholic prayer book, and they shot him in the back of the head.
Life was about survival.
It was amazing the amount of young kids, that were getting hurt, that were getting hit by plastic bullets.
My childhood was very much, it was a world of fear. There was a war essentially going on around us, which we were all too conscious of. It just seemed like reality to us that while you were out playing with other kids, that you would be playing in the midst of a patrol of soldiers in full combat gear.
Young people, young children, saw horrific things and were conditioned by this. Schools were segregated. You had Catholic schools and you had Protestant schools. And Protestant children never met Catholic children, and Catholic children never met Protestant children. And to each, the other side were the enemy. On the Catholic nationalist side, the enemy wasn't just the Protestants. Increasingly, as the conflict evolved, the enemy was the Brits.
It's important to remember as well, the Troubles were exciting. If you're, say, you're 13 years old, in your working class area, but there's the Troubles going on all around you, you could come out sort of on the house and you just hurtle down Rossville Street with a stone in your hand, taking on the British Army. If you were in your early teens, that was quite a thing, quite a thing. Nobody ever got used to the violence that engulfed the community. 6- and 7-year-olds who were playing cowboys and Indians, could find themselves playing soldiers and civilians in a deadly game.
It's a short step from throwing stones at an army vehicle to actually picking up a gun and shooting the inhabitants, or making and planting a bomb that would blow up the vehicle. A very short step, because once young people, children in particular, have become inured to violence, that's where you had the seeds being sown for the conflict, the violent conflict that continued for the next 20, 30 years.
Two bombs which went off were detonated in
the
the
two
car.
explosions, one man was killed, 2 policemen were seriously hurt.
The outlawed Irish Republican Army.
The explosion shattered windows as far as half a mile away, and a large plume of black
When it
smoke
exploded, witnesses said it shook the earth.
Authorities believe the Irish Republican Army set off a car bomb.
This is not just a British problem. This is an international problem. We have a situation which is explosive. It could...
Every evening when you put on the 6 o'clock news, the headlines was Northern Ireland.
Among the dead are Protestants and Catholics. Some are children.
The bomb was meant for men inside, but it killed 2 little girls. It went off at 8 o'clock Halloween night.
I was a student in Oxford when the Troubles began in the late 60s. And it was still hot in 75. A lot of people were dying. A lot of grudges being built on that shed blood.
There was a great need to take the kids out of Northern Ireland, and we were seeing that need on television every day.
What do you think is going to happen in the future? What will it be like to grow up here?
I don't think the troubles will end.
You don't? What do you think will happen?
I think they'll just keep on and going on.
The sleepy villages of upstate New York were a world away from the sectarian violence unfolding on the streets of Northern Ireland. Dennis and his brothers Tom, Pat and John had all emigrated to America in the early 1960s, joining a wave of immigrants leaving Ireland in pursuit of the American dream. Working in the police and fire departments of New York City, the brothers settled 60 miles away in the small town of Greenwood Lake, and along with their new American neighbors, formed an Irish cultural society.
Oh, look who's here, the old man. Hey, how you doing there?
Their initial idea was to promote and host Irish events. But nightly news reports showing children caught up in the Northern Ireland Troubles convinced the group that they needed to intervene in some way.
Okay, I have one short announcement. This is actually the table.
In August 1974, around the Mulcahy family kitchen table, the charity Project Children was born.
Desi, do you recall the first meeting that we had?
Yes, I do, very well. We had a meeting in your basement. We had John Mulcahy, Pat Mulcahy, Tom Mulcahy, Dennis Mulcahy, Duke Hoffman, Bill O'Connor, Mike O'Neill, and myself. And that's the first one I remember.
At that meeting, we came up with this idea that if we could just bring some of these kids out of there for the summer, put them into homes here, it might have some type of an effect on them. You know, it was very basic. We said we would bring the first kids out of Belfast, that we would make contact with some schools there. And of course, that the program would be 50-50. We would bring both Catholic and Protestant kids out of there.
Whilst the newly formed group had a plan, they had no money for such a costly venture. So the fundraising had to start in earnest.
It was decided that evening that, well, we'll start off by having a 50-50. This 50-50 was that each person at the meeting would put in $5. It came to $50, and the draw would be the person winning would get half. I happened to win it, and I said, no, leave the $50, and that's where we started, $50.
$50 was a decent start, but the newly formed charity would need another $1,500 if they wanted to bring 6 kids to America for the summer.
Back in the 70s, money was tight. Greenwood Lake is middle-income family. There's nobody extremely rich here that you're going to get any huge donations.
Pat Mulcahy, who had donated his winnings from that first meeting, took on the task of approaching the wider immigrant community for the money the charity needed.
I went to this Irish-American organization, and I explained to him what Project Children was all about. I got a very, very cold reception, because the question was, you're bringing Protestant children? And I said, oh, yes. All children in Northern Ireland mean the same to us. And, well, now, you know, you won't be getting any help here. So I was totally dumbfounded. When I left the meeting, coming home, I was so down and so depressed about it that I honestly felt like just throwing in the towel.
The group's ambitions of bringing children to America had suffered an early blow, but the opposition to their plans shouldn't have been entirely unexpected.
And let's pray for a united Ireland. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
There were a lot of people active in the U.S. in Irish affairs, not always for the better.
I think there was a degree of ignorance on the part of the Irish-American community who saw the problem in black and white, simplistic terms. The enemy were the Brits. The enemy were the Protestants. It was as simple as that.
In the early 1970s, Narrated, established to help prisoners in Northern Ireland, were secretly raising money for the IRA, who were engaged in a violent struggle against the British state.
Irish America, Narrated, provided the finance for the sinews of war for the IRA through the 1970s and beyond. Narrated's main way of raising cash was by having these huge dinners at, hundreds of dollars a plate. I remember being at one dinner and the money flowed into the coffers. I don't think many people there would be that concerned about whether the money went to support IRA prisoners or went to buy weapons.
Here on the streets of Northern Ireland, the security forces certainly have no doubt what happens to that money from the United States. It goes to buy these, the weapons used by the IRA. Many, the M60 machine guns and the Armalite rifles, come from the United States, bought with American dollars.
Through the 1970s, it's estimated that 2,500 weapons, many of which were high-velocity rifles, the Armalite, and about 1 million rounds or more of ammunition were shipped from America into Northern Ireland.
Whilst Americans with sinister motives were getting involved in the Northern Ireland conflict, on a political level, successive US presidents had declined to intervene in what they saw as affairs of the British government.
We were always in the thick of it psychologically, the Irish Americans were. But there was a reason the United States had always stayed out, even though we have the largest Irish diaspora in the world by a long ways. And after fighting our first 2 wars against the British, we had become the closest of allies. And in the Cold War, it mattered a lot that we were always together.
The British view of Northern Ireland was, this is our problem. You keep your noses out of this, be it Dublin's noses or America's noses, not your problem, our problem, we will deal with it.
As radical fringe groups filled the vacuum created by American political inaction,
I support the Irish Republican Army.
it was perhaps unsurprising that Pat Mulcahy had been publicly reprimanded for daring to include Protestant children in the charity's plans.
There was maybe 30, 40 people at the meeting, and I was so let down because nobody spoke up. I took that personal. We're talking about children.
But privately, those same people who were afraid to speak up were now having second thoughts.
And the phone started to ring. I must have got at least 10 calls from people that was at the meeting that was said, send me, keep a table of tickets for me for the dance, send me so many raffle tickets, and apologizing for the way I was treated. And I knew it's a river that won't be stopped.
Pat's success in persuading ordinary Americans to donate money meant the charity could now bring 6 kids, both Catholics and Protestants, out of harm's way for a summer. In Greenwood Lake, the same families who made up the Gaelic Cultural Society were now preparing to open their homes to kids from the streets of Belfast. Delivery driver Duke Hoffman and his wife Carol were host family number 1.
We were sitting around the table and someone said, would you take a child? I said, I can't see why not. I said, let me give my wife a call and see what she says about it. So I called her up and she says, what do you want now? And I said, there's a reason why I'm calling you. This program going to be started. They want to know if we would host a child from Ireland, Belfast. Okay, but she says, on the one stipulation, I want 2 kids. And they have to be boys. And
one can be a Protestant and one can be a Catholic, because I'm Protestant and you're Catholic. And he said, okay.
The Hoffmans' quiet bungalow on the edge of a lake in upstate New York would be home for 2 boys from Northern Ireland during the summer of 1975. It was a picture postcard image that couldn't have been more at odds with the violence engulfing Belfast. Dennis Mulcahy was keen to target children who had most to gain from a summer holiday in America. So he enlisted the help of local school teachers to identify potential project children.
Well, first of all, I taught some of the children, and I would have talked to their parents, and I suppose I sold the project. I said, look, your child's going to go to a family in America. They're going to live, have a normal family life. There's not going to be shootings, there's not going to be bombings. For 6 weeks, you know one of your family is safe. Of course, some parents would, oh God, no, wouldn't let my child go to the youth club up the street, never mind go to America.
You know, some stranger come up to them and ask him, you know, you want to be a part of this program. It involves traveling to America, living with a family. That family may be Catholic, may be Protestant, you know. They weren't sure, and they didn't mind.
You know, when you look back, it was very trusting of people to do it, but the tension and the atmosphere of society then, people were terrified for their children then, and they were willing to take the risk. I think that set the scene for parents willing to trust us to take them to America.
What do we do with that book? What did I do with that book? There it is. It's amazing how young some of these kids were. We got some Scotch tape on it, keeping it together. We brought 6 kids that first year, starting with Kevin Brady, John Shivers.
In June 1975, the first Project Children group left for America. 9-year-old Kevin Brady and John Cheevers, 11, were young boys from either side of a divided Belfast. The first time they had ever met someone of a different tradition was when they met each other on the very first Project Children flight.
I remember distinctly messing around with the chairs because they went back and forth.
The seat in front of me kept on coming back and forward, and there was a kid in front.
It seemed to me like a big armchair.
He was a Catholic in front of me. His name was Kevin.
And it just seemed to be something to have fun with.
Like, he kept on doing this on purpose.
I pressed it at the wrong time, just as John was getting into his tapioca pudding.
And I ended up, it went in my face. I was covered in it.
He wasn't too happy at all.
I tapped him on the head, and he got up, and he knew where I was from, and I knew where he was from. And I said, you got to stop this with the seat. And he went back and forth, and they ended up throwing punches at each other. And then they were pulled apart.
Oblivious to the tension developing on the flight, Dennis and his neighbours from Greenwood Lake were eagerly awaiting their young visitors from Belfast.
Well, there was a lot of anticipation because, again, a lot of things go through your mind. You know, is the kid going to like your family? Will you like the child? You know, a lot of simple stuff.
I wasn't nervous. I was saying, who am I going to get? You know, who are the 2 kids? I was looking forward to it because boys are boys. They challenge. I dealt coaching and so forth. And I said, we're going to give these kids a good time.
For John and Kevin, adversaries on the flight, their dream summer in America was getting off to a difficult start.
We got off the plane, and nobody was really talking.
I just felt completely lost and like, where am I?
So I'm waiting to be introduced, and I'm standing looking at him. He goes, hoping to end up with him. The thought just crossed my mind, you know?
And as they were sort of pairing the kids off, I thought to myself, well, I wonder if I'm going to be paired with this fella. I don't think he liked me, and I didn't really like him too much either.
When John and Kevin came in, you could see the little standoffish. You're a Catholic and I'm a Protestant, and this is probably what's in their mind. And I'm not supposed to be talking to you, and you're not supposed to be talking to me.
All of a sudden, and you 2 are going to be standing with introduced to Carl and Duke, and I looked at him, and I was floored. I was like, I can't fucking believe this.
I wasn't really looking at them. I was just thinking, oh my God, I have to spend 6 weeks with this guy.
Imagine the Catholic and Protestant boy coming, and they have a first fight on an airplane, and then they come into our house. I said, how is that going to blend in?
Then we ended up in a limousine together, and it was transfixed looking out. You could see the Manhattan skyline and stuff.
And I'll never forget, we're coming over the big bridge, and everything I had eaten on the plane decided to come up at that one time. And I threw up in the back of the limousine.
You know, slapping into you, I'm glad it happened to you, you know. You're making a fool of yourself. I'm not being sick. I was watching the Manhattan skyline and he's throwing up.
Project Children thought bringing kids out of Northern Ireland would help ease the tension they were experiencing at home. But for John and Kevin, moving into their new American home was only making things worse.
To share the same room as a Catholic, share the same bedroom, you know, running around in my underwear in front of a Catholic, you know what I mean? I couldn't fathom it. I was kind of like, I guess I met him in a state of shock.
So we started unpacking our suitcases, and my thought was, okay, well, I'm going to be sharing a room with an alien because I don't know this guy. He may as well be from Mars. As much interaction that we may have had in Belfast.
There was tension in the bedroom. There definitely was. You could cut it with a knife.
Will the 6 weeks make a difference? At Greenwood Lake, they hope it will. John, who's your buddy here?
Kevin?
Is he a buddy from back home?
No.
No.
Don't see him much.
Why don't you see your buddy back home?
Because he lives, I'm a Protestant, he's a Catholic, and you live in areas, you don't live next to each other.
Yeah. Well, are you afraid sometimes at home?
Sometimes.
Why?
In case I get beat up or things, something like that.
Yeah. And what else can happen? Anything else that you think of?
Get shot, things like that.
I was born in a wee house, 17 Ballymena Street, the Old Park Road. When I was a wee boy, a lot of riots started. Protestants and Catholics used to fight at the bottom of my street every night. Just rioting, violence, vigilantes, seeing people getting beat up, watching the paramilitaries march through the streets. I was crazy. I mean, used to have the bottom and the top of my street cordoned off with barbed wire and these things they pull across. It was horrible. Like, no man's land and all bricked up. There must have been a couple hundred houses in that street. And there was only like probably 15, 20 people living in the street. That was just life. Every day, you know, when are you going to be attacked?
It's just, you're sort of just going back to a bloody place. Because in Ireland, if I talk to a Protestant, if some Catholic boy sees me, they might beat me up.
I grew up in the New Lodge Road area of Belfast. I think my first memory was getting up in the middle of the night because I had a headache. And my mom, she'd give me a little pill and I was getting a glass of water and looking out that window and seeing about 4 different major fires going off at the same time that had been started by bombs. Remember my mom being very, very protective of us and trying to keep us inside the house as much as possible. But, I mean, that was impossible, basically. We had gunfire. We had guys in tanks and Saracens and, you know, just a war going on. I was very young. I remember participating in riots where people were killed, where people were maimed and people were badly, badly injured. I was very lucky that nothing ever happened to me.
In the American suburbs of 1975, the Hoffmans had no time for divisions created by the violence in Northern Ireland.
And I said, you're not in Belfast. You're here in America. You're in my house, John. I'm a Catholic. And I love you just as much as I love Kevin. And Carol does the same thing. She loves Kevin as much as she loves you. Your fate has no bearing on it. We're all one in this household.
Ironically, it was confrontation that made them question their suspicions of each other.
The reason that I wanted the 2 boys is because my best friend at the time was living next door and she had 2 boys.
Walt and Philip lived next door, and they caused Uncle Duke and Carol.
Duke was like a surrogate father to us and Carol. like a surrogate mom, you know. It was really an excellent relationship. They took real good care of us.
Duke took them everywhere, took them camping and stuff. And so we came there, kind of cut out of the picture. We were getting all the attention.
When they got here, we started to see that they started to invest more time, and John and Kevin can't say we were crazy about it, you know.
At first, they liked us. They were okay for the first day or so, then they started getting jealous.
Hey, how would you feel? You come into the house, and I'm your best pal, and all of a sudden I'm sitting with the other kid here talking to him and forgetting about you. You wouldn't like it neither.
The only exposure we had at the time to Irish accents was the Lucky Charms leprechaun. So we, you know, and he spoke clearly enough in the commercials that we could understand it.
Just even the way he said Kevin, come on, Kevin. Like Kevin, it's Kevin for us. It's not Kevin, John. It's Kevin. Catch yourself on, Kevin. Kevin, it was Kevin. Catch yourself on, Kevin.
Kevin, he talked fast. He would, I said, what you say? The other guys, they would laugh. What is he saying? I said, you shouldn't laugh, because they could resent that.
And so we had enough, and I stood up for Kevin outside the front door. Walt and I were going to get into it, and he was a lot bigger than me. But then Duke came out, and Duke seen what was going on.
I don't want you fighting anymore. It's done deal. It's over.
Duke put an end to it. But that thing of us having this, there I'm sticking up for a Catholic kid, and he's sticking up for me, and looking out for one another. It definitely drew us together.
So we kind of united a little bit because we were both the aliens in a strange place.
After their rocky start, Kevin and John put their differences aside to enjoy a sun-drenched summer in New York.
I played baseball, I played soccer, I've done everything.
We swam together, ran together, ate breakfast together, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, did everything together. It was like a 6-week adventure.
We got to go to the Statue of Liberty. It just took my breath away.
Why don't you ask them? Being able to eat outside here on a picnic table, eating pizza. I remember the first time it was a Tuesday, and she was making chicken, and I was shocked. You know, chicken on a Tuesday, and that was something we had on a Sunday. It was just a completely different experience. It changed me.
The kind of conflict taking place in Northern Ireland, part of that conflict was based on not knowing who the other side was, demonizing them. Well, it was very hard to demonize John Cheevers after I spent 6 weeks with him.
The modest success of that first summer convinced Dennis of the benefit of his idea, and he was now keen to expand the ambition of the charity.
So in 1976, we increased our numbers to 21, which was a big jump from 6. In 77, we did close to 100 kids. Then we expanded out to Monroe, which is our next town, you know, up to Middletown, then across the river to Poughkeepsie. The organization was starting to grow, bringing more and more children. Looking back at it now, it sure did take a life of its own, but back in them days, it just went from day to day and year to year. You didn't really give it too much thought.
This year-on-year expansion meant children from all across Northern Ireland were getting the chance to enjoy a peaceful summer in the American suburbs. But it was an experience that began before they had even left home.
My only experience of airplanes was what I saw on television. And it tended to be people like businessmen with briefcases, or as I thought of them then, attaché cases. So when I was getting ready to go, I insisted that I had to be dressed properly to be on this plane. It's a very serious thing, a very formal thing, getting onto this plane. I gotta look the part. So we went out shopping, and I asked for the most American-looking suit that you could possibly find. And I also got myself an attaché case. Now, there wasn't anything in it, but it just seemed to go with the suit. Because you just don't know when you need an attaché case, right?
I was 9-year-old. I couldn't wait to go. I just thought, geez, America, 6 weeks during the summer. I can remember getting my jeans and my tops and all my clothes for going away to America.
Every child there was dressed in their Sunday best. Everybody was well-groomed and looking neat and tidy.
And you'd see this particular flight number, then you just said, memo to self, bed early the night before, because you needed to be in the whole of your health when you were doing that flight, because these kids ran you up. It was a workout.
The first hour or two of that flight was chaotic.
Their attention span, like any child, you know, you can amuse them for 5 minutes, and then it was like, miss, miss, and it was Coke, Coke, and what's this, miss? And every button was pushed, and seats were flying back.
Everybody had to go to the bathroom because everybody just had to see what the bathroom on a plane looked like.
They murdered the call bells.
You can't actually get more neutral than flying in a plane. And we were united just in a common experience that was forward-looking, that was all about the summer that we were about to have.
And I remember everybody trying to press themselves up against the window to get their first glimpse of America. I'm surprised the plane didn't tilt over.
Over 400 children from areas of Northern Ireland most affected by the violence arrived in America last night for an extended holiday.
And I'd get to New York then, and of course, everything was so strange.
And as soon as the door opened, hearing bagpipes, and just this huge giant of a man leading this mass band of bagpipers.
And so when we landed, we had come to another world. We'd left all of that behind, and we didn't know what we were going to, but it was really exciting.
I'd only seen America on TV. You know, I knew about skyscrapers and the Big Apple and, you know, the Cosby Show and E.T. and, you know, what I knew about America was Hollywood, really.
For 3 hours before the children arrived at New York's Kennedy Airport, the temporary foster parents were waiting. Some had Irish connections, but many were just ordinary Americans who had heard about life in the tougher areas of Belfast and Londonderry, and in their words, wanted to give the kids a break.
We're going to let her unwind a bit. The pool, the beach, the Statue of Liberty, the Circle Line tour of Manhattan, horseback riding, you know, the works. I want her to go back a very, very happy little girl.
They'll get away from the way they live and get a chance to see that not every place is like that.
I think one of the best things is to treat them like your own children. People who maybe fuss about them too much at the beginning may run into little problems or spoil them at the beginning. I think the big thing is you take them into your home and you treat them just like your own.
This is at the Kennedy Airport, New York City, 1981. And our child there is number 33, Seamus Morris. And then behind him is my wife, Nancy.
In 1981, Seamus Morris arrived. Seamus was very friendly, very outgoing, and very active, liked to play sports, soccer, anything he played at, he excelled.
Now, this is Seamus. You can see he's a pretty good diver. Gets at least 8.5. Nice pool in the background. The pool's been around for about 40 years now.
This was it. This was the place. This was where we'd come, where Seamus would come and and spend our days here, spend the entire summer here, and it was awesome. He was a friend, and more than that, looking back on it, he was like another brother to me.
I'll always remember my time in America. Just everything about it. You know, times were tough, and to get to go on a plane for the first time and to be heading to America, it was just something else. And it was just a world away from Ardoyne.
Connor Morris, Seamus's younger brother, was also a Project Children child.
So this is where it happened. Just down here. The car was driving down this street. We were coming out of the wee shop here, and the car slowed, and we had to stop to let the car go by. And all I heard was the rattle. And this is the plaque.
The shooting happened shortly before noon. A car drew up in a Catholic area of northwest Belfast. Eyewitnesses said a number of men got out of the car wearing masks. There were 2 bursts of automatic fire aimed at a group of people standing on the pavement. A 17-year-old youth died immediately. A beer lorry attempted to ram the gunman's car. One of the men in the cab was shot and died later in hospital.
At first, I didn't realise what it was. It was a relic unfair. I had cut my head down and bolted, and turned back to see had Seamus got away. Well, unfortunately, he didn't. I went over to him, and I knew straight away that he was dead. The blood pumping out the back of his head.
Connor and Seamus were best friends. They just weren't brothers, they were best friends. Done everything together, played Gaelic together, played pool together every day, you know. Where one was, the other one was. Best friends. Tough one, Connor.
I had to leave him and go up and tell my mother. I had to tell her that Seamus was dead.
Mum was devastated. Seamus was always a blue eye. You know, she loved him. It was her oldest son, you can imagine. I'm not saying she had any favourites, but obviously he was her first child, and you know, she knew he was going places, and she was just devastated.
I was home and the phone rang, and I picked up, and it happened to be the aunt of Seamus Morris. And she told me point blankly that Seamus had been killed in the streets of Belfast. My mother wasn't home, so I had to wait for her to arrive, and when she did, I told her that Seamus had been killed.
Peter told me, and I broke down. Peter will tell you, I collapsed. I was heartbroken.
She took the news very hard. She pretty much immediately collapsed. She cried. She broke down. And she became hysterical. I had never seen my mother react to anything like that before. It really felt like she had lost her own child.
Because I felt if we had taken him in, he wouldn't have been killed.
But you did so much for him, Nancy, at the same time, didn't you?
I thought we did.
We took it very hard. It just was mind-boggling that something like this could happen.
I didn't understand it. I really didn't. I couldn't understand why someone would kill a boy, because to me, he was still a boy. And why would they kill him? I didn't understand that. Didn't make any sense.
Looking at the troubles, you know, what was going on in Northern Ireland and the number of people that were getting hurt and killed at the time, I know that by just bringing the kids out of there, that we saved a lot of kids' lives. However, we didn't save everybody. We did lose a number of kids after returning.
You can't save everyone, Dennis, you know, you can't.
No, but you try, you try.
These 6 weeks have been so great. But tomorrow, Sunday, is going home day. And then back to Belfast and the trouble. Bombing, shooting, endless death. Jim Van Sickle, News Center 4.
Sending those first children back home in 1975, having treated them as one of the family, was an emotional experience for their American parents. As Seamus Morris's murder would ultimately prove, Northern Ireland was not a safe place.
Karen Duke took us to the airport. There was tearful goodbyes.
Karen Duke were crying. They were really sad to see us go. I was sad, you know.
I think I managed to shed a couple of tears myself. We were heading home.
Taking the kids back to the airport was tough. And when they went home, it tore us apart. Hey, when these kids came over here, I get emotional, but when these kids came over here, that was our family. We started a family. And I treasure that. And bringing them back to the airport, you've seen people cry. I was the biggest crier there. And you want to know something? It was emotional, very emotional, to let them go. I knew they had to go because they had family. But when they came here, we had 2 children.
Still, the troubles were ongoing. It was a kind of a tough night along were you leaving go of that young person that you had all summer, and you weren't sure what you were sending him back to. So that was, you know, it was quite emotional at the airport. Kids got very close to each other while they were here, and I guess going through their mind also was when they got home, would they ever have an opportunity to see each other?
I asked both of them, I said, will you guys communicate back? No. Kevin would say, no, don't beat me up. They find out if I was talking to John, that's a no. He's no, and John says, it won't happen.
And then we were on the plane, and we're back home. And the weirdest part was when Kevin and I said goodbye.
Both of us knew at that time that this was it.
I turned and he turned and walked away, and I walked away.
So even though we were very close together geographically, I mean, he may as well have lived in South Africa for as many times as I was going to see him. It seemed a little bit cruel at the time that we could not remain friends. But that was the reality. There was nothing you could do about it. And I was 9 years old, so nothing was going to change because the 9-year-old wanted it to change.
By the early 1980s, the Troubles had been raging for over 10 years and were reaching a new critical phase. The story of 10 Republican prisoners starving themselves to death was focusing international news headlines on the hunger strikes.
Stand by on 12. 3, 2, 1. Music, Mike, cue.
8:16 right now. Fighting and violence have been a way of life in Northern Ireland for many years now. The issues are complicated.
As Project Children expanded, the kids who had arrived in America for a holiday were now finding themselves part of the daily news cycle.
All around America, people wanted to know, why are these children here and who are they, where are they from and what's the story? And children loved it.
Bernadette McDonnell and Keith Dixon are two of the 160 children who arrived from Belfast last week.
Good Morning America was the biggest breakfast programme in America, and to think we were going to be on that, they were going to talk about Project Children, happy days. It meant the whole of America was seeing our programme for what it was, and we were delighted with that.
But the charity that had always steered clear of taking a political line on the violence unwittingly found themselves at the centre of international controversy.
Now, your dad, I think we should say, your dad is in prison, right?
Yes.
And he's also one of the hunger strikers, isn't he?
Yes. They wanted to know what was happening in Ireland and what was happening with the hunger strike and why my daddy was doing what he'd done and how did I feel.
Bernadette's father, Joe McDonnell, was the 5th Republican prisoner to protest his treatment in the Maze prison by going on hunger strike. The Republicans were demanding status as political prisoners, but these demands were repeatedly rejected by then British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
Crime is crime is crime. It is not political, it is crime.
Can anybody help the situation, do you think, in Northern Ireland?
Well, if the people of America would write to President Reagan, he might phone Mrs. Thatcher, and then the pressure will be put on Mrs. Thatcher, and she will have to do something.
Young Bernadette's seemingly innocent response left Project Children open to accusations of political bias.
It looked like it was political. It looked that we were putting that child up, and we weren't. Project Children wasn't political, didn't want to be political. But when you consider the children that we were taking came from political backgrounds, and those children brought that baggage with them.
I didn't think it was going to cause any trouble or, you know, papers would have picked it up different or put headlines to things. It was just me telling them what was happening to my family.
After 61 days on hunger strike, Joe McDonnell died, and Bernadette's American holiday was cut short. 10 men would ultimately starve themselves to death inside the Maze prison. The Northern Irish situation remained as intractable as ever.
The key to understanding the relationship between Britain and America through the 1980s was the relationship between Mrs. Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. That relationship was extremely close on personal terms, but also on political terms too, because they were both conservative right-wing ideologues. So there was no chance of any political progress as long as Mrs. Thatcher was in Downing Street and Ronald Reagan was in the White House.
With seemingly no end to the violence, more and more American families signed up as Project Children hosts, meaning that the charity was now spreading far beyond its heartland of New York and New Jersey. Its arrival in Washington, D.C., the American capital, would mark the beginning of a process that would see it directly influence the political situation in Northern Ireland.
A friend of ours in New York had read about Dennis and Project Children in a New York newspaper. So we took a couple of boys, one Protestant, one Catholic, for one summer. And then by that time, friends had begun to notice and were inquiring about, how do you do this? And so, before you know it, I found myself on the phone with Dennis saying, we think we've got a potential group of host families here.
I'm Carol Wheeler. Every summer, like hundreds of families around the country, my husband and I welcome 1 or 2 children from Northern Ireland into our home for a 6-week visit.
In 1988, I was invited to a fundraiser, and a neighbor who knew Carol Wheeler invited, we all went together. I think it was the second fundraiser for Project Children in Washington.
Carol Wheeler and her husband Tom, a couple well known in Washington political circles, spearheaded the effort to nourish Project Children in the shadow of Capitol Hill and the White House itself.
It's fair to say that our house sort of became the focal point of getting Project Children launched in D.C. And as we tried to shake the trees and find the money to support the Project Children program here, I think it really is safe to say that a lot more people in Washington became much more aware of what was going on in Northern Ireland.
I think that's why Project Children was so compelling, because you heard the story about how it was affecting young children.
The Washington, D.C. host families made sure those compelling stories were heard by as many people as possible in the corridors of power.
What do tourists do when they come to Washington? You want to go to the Capitol. So we thought, well, why shouldn't we take the kids to the Capitol and have them meet members of Congress? They are the ones who govern our country.
Very soon, those youngsters are either going to be the people that are doing the bombing, or they're going to be the people that are struggling for peace. And when you still have youngsters that are only 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, you still have hope. This is, in fact, the process of peace. So I think it's probably much more important that we end up providing for the youngsters, for the kids, than if we did for all the great leaders.
Project Children did help, was one of the things that helped to humanize the Troubles for a lot of people. It helped to humanize it for some individuals who actually were in positions where they could have an impact on, encouraging the peace process.
With Project Children beginning to penetrate the political establishment of Washington, D.C., it was also influencing the lives of children in ways the original founders of the Greenwood Lake Gaelic Cultural Society could never have imagined.
I was single and I thought, I just bought a house. I thought I have this whole house to myself. I should put it to some good use, and I thought it might be fun.
Mary Ann Sullivan, a Washington lawyer, welcomed 10-year-old Frankie Hughes into her home in 1988.
I grew up in West Belfast. Where I first lived was a neighbourhood called the Davis Flats. And actually one of my first memories, I think I was probably about 5 years old at the time, there was a bomb went off in the ground just below the apartment. I was on the 3rd floor. It's a very daunting, frightening feeling.
When this opportunity came for Frankie to go to America, why hold him back? His mommy didn't want him to go. And he really looked, I kept saying to her, he's getting a golden opportunity here. It's like winning the lottery or something, because we don't get any holidays or anything. Get them out of this here, even if it's only for 6 weeks, get them out.
Little did Frankie's dad know then, but that one summer would help shape the rest of his son's life.
Frankie's aspirations for himself when he first came to the States were very low.
That first summer I came out, an interviewer like yourself asked me the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I don't think I'd really thought about it too much. And on the spur of the moment, I said a bin man. I guess I just didn't think that far ahead when I was young.
Living in my house, he couldn't help but understand that I considered education very important.
In Mary Ann's house, it was, if you have some downtime, you're going to read a book. I do a lot of pretend reading. when I first got there, I'd look at the page and I'm like, yeah, I'm reading the book.
Frankie's initial reluctance was resolved with a uniquely American approach to education.
During the summer, she would actually pay me to read. I think she started off 50 cents an hour.
I was always looking for opportunities to encourage him to read more, to pay more attention in school, to be more of a serious student when he went home.
I would keep track of the hours I was studying when I was back in Belfast when I was 16, and I would send her a bill for the hours I was studying, and she would send me a check.
Incentivized by Mary Ann, Frankie moved to America permanently when he was 16.
I felt as proud as any mother ever felt when he graduated from high school and then when he graduated from college.
The boy who arrived in Washington with desires to be a garbage collector is now teaching English literature to American high school students.
That is going to, again, set off a whole other chain of events.
His whole life's all changed, and he's a wonderful guy, and he's got a good future in front of him over there. If he'd have stayed here, God knows, he might have got involved in trouble. He could have been killed, he could have been hurt, you don't know. So I think it was a wise decision. I have no difficulties with it. I'm glad I've done what I've done, you know. And Frankie's glad too.
Some families had thought about bringing kids back to go to school or, get them out of harm's way, but that really wasn't the purpose of the program, to separate kids from their families or whatever.
Despite the charity's reservations, many who had traveled with Project Children saw their former host families as a way out. In the months before his brutal murder, young Seamus Morris was convinced his future lay across the Atlantic with Jim and Nancy Stanfield.
He said he would have always loved to go back to the Stanfields because obviously they made a big impact on his life. And I dare say one day he would have.
Dear James and Nancy, I'm sure you will be surprised to be hearing from us. It has been quite a while since I have written to you, and now that I am, it is to ask something of you. We did get a letter from Seamus's mother in 1987, and she asked us if we might be able to have him come back because things were not good there. Seamus has been saving money from his job every week. Have you any ideas that would help him to get out? We would miss him a lot as he is a very good lad, but his father and I both think that it would be a better life for him. We had sold our business at the time. We were thinking of moving to Cape Cod. So I kind of put that letter on hold. Then the following summer, we got the phone call that Seamus had been killed. I will enclose a photo of the kids. So until I hear from you, all our love and best wishes to all your family. Love from Seamus and Madeline.
I had never seen you like that. And I haven't seen you like that since. You were very affected by it.
Well, I still am. I mean, just talking about it today. I'm emotional. I am. I felt very guilty. I did feel like I had lost one of my own because I felt during those 6 weeks while he was there, I was his mother.
Carol and Duke would take us to different churches. Duke would take me to the Holy Rosary Catholic Church, and Carol would take John to the Lutheran Church in Greenwood Lake. I always figured I got the better of the deal because the Catholic Mass was only about half an hour, and John was in the Lutheran Church for about 2 hours. I think after a while he was a wee bit jealous of me.
Having formed a friendship during their American summer of 1975, Kevin Brady and John Cheevers never expected to see each other again in their divided Belfast.
That's completely surreal. I mean, it was like, what are we just spent 6 great weeks together, and I'm never gonna ever see you again. And because you're a Catholic and because I'm a Protestant.
But back in Greenwood Lake, Carol and Duke Hoffman were hoping the boys would return.
I cried probably for 2 weeks after they left. Definitely missed them. And I was concerned about their welfare.
It was incredible, the bonds that was formed over the 6 weeks. And of course, everybody wanted to bring back the same child they had before. So the rule we came up with was, if you want to repeat the child, you'll have to cover the airfare.
In line with the rules of the charity, the Hoffmans reached into their own pockets to bring Kevin and John back to Greenwood Lake, not only in 1976, but for years afterwards.
They were back and forth quite a few years, and then they wound up going to school here.
I thought they'd get an education over here better than they would get an education over there. And they wouldn't have to live in the atmosphere that they were living in. Worrying about bombs and cars and shootings.
This connection to their American parents eventually led to both boys relocating permanently. The two suspicious kids from Belfast would eventually become best man at each other's weddings.
Carol and Duke have been a huge part of my life ever since I was about 8 years old. I'm extremely excited to see them. I have a debt of gratitude to them that can never be repaid. My God, back again. Hey! Oh my God! Oh, it's great to see you. Look at you.
You got old, I know.
No, you didn't. You got small.
I was crying. You got small.
You look brilliant.
Good. You lost weight, I think, since the last time I seen you.
A wee bit. A wee bit.
John's gonna be over later. It's not here yet. Look at these pictures. Look how young you were then. Look at you now. You remember these? You remember these pictures here?
I do indeed. Remember they going to the Statue of Liberty?
Oh, John's here.
Oh, there you go.
Kevin, go open the door.
All right.
See him in a while.
Let me get it. Jesus!
Oh, God.
Who are you? How are you? Good to see you, man.
With the grey hairs. How you doing, Kevin?
You look great. I'm doing all right.
That's
Doing
good.
all right. You're looking well.
That's good, thanks.
Well, you've got less grey than I do, then.
I've got less hair.
What's up, mate?
How you doing?
Well, here, we've got a couple of dodgy pictures of us. You want to have a wee look for the old days?
That sounds good.
Come on. There's a good one there.
That's a definition of a cheap suit.
Well, what size was it?
I don't even know.
And the belt?
I don't even had the belt on right. That was my funeral suit.
The old room.
Yeah.
My God, it's a bit smaller, isn't it?
Yeah. There's 2 single beds.
And you were on that side?
Yep.
Yeah.
There used to be a picture of Jesus on the wall. And I always felt like he was staring at me for some reason. Because it used to drive me nuts.
See, in our house, we had 2 people looking at you, John Kennedy and the Pope. Belfast was like grey. This place was in colour.
Mm-hmm. Just to have all that weight off your shoulders was amazing.
Exactly.
I felt safe being here.
Diffusing tensions among the children of Northern Ireland's troubles was a fulfilling yet ironic legacy for Dennis Mulcahy, who at the same time was working on the front line with New York City's bomb squad. It was a job not without its dangers.
Brian's sacrifice saved lives in our community. He's somebody that will be remembered and honored here in the bomb squad and by the NYPD forever.
They were tough years in the city. You have to know what you're doing, you know, in that business. You can't wing it.
Dennis has built up a reputation that other bomb techs want to be like him. He shows all the qualities. He's been around. He's had the big cases. And particularly the guys in our squad, when something happens, that's the guy they want to go to, pull his coattail and ask him, Dennis, what should we be doing here?
The older you get, the more senile you get.
Dennis was the last line of defense against New York City's domestic terrorist groups.
When you come up in the package, you know, you are going to do what you have to do because there is nobody you can call. You know, you are the end of the line. And as far as saying, well, there'll always be somebody with me, well, there won't, because you're it. You have to stay focused. It's very important. After, you know, it's a different story. You take off the suit and, you know, not that you second guess yourself, but you have more time to think about what might happen or could have happened. And my thing with dealing with any kind of suspicious package is time on the package. If you hang around down there long enough, you're going to get hurt. You know, get down, get it done, get out of there.
As Dennis led Project Children into its third decade, intervening in the lives of children from Northern Ireland, change was afoot in Washington.
The situation changed when Bill Clinton became president. Bill Clinton was sympathetic to the cause of Irish nationalism. Bill Clinton recognized that there had to be a political solution.
As a dynamic new president worked out how best to broker a lasting solution in Northern Ireland, Project Children host families were fast becoming part of the American political establishment.
We welcomed Michael to our family. There were really no trepidations. Some obviously curiosity about where he came from and what he would be like and so forth, but he really fit in quite well. I think it helped him to form a bond with us and with the U.S., and certainly it did for us with Ireland, because my involvement in Ireland after that just mushroomed.
It was a way in which you can be involved very directly and without having to really take sides. Project Children smoothed the way for the peace process in Northern Ireland before there was a peace process in Northern Ireland.
Kitty Higgins was among the first Washington, D.C. host families.
We are happy to have a child come live with us for the summer. We have an extra bed, we have a seat at the table, we want to help. And I think Americans are generous people, by and large, particularly when they see need.
First of all, the way I became aware of Dennis was because of Catherine Higgins, who works for me.
Kitty's job at the heart of the Clinton administration would soon collide the personal and political worlds of Project Children and Dennis Mulcahy.
Every year there are top cops selected from around the country, and in 1995, Dennis was selected as one of those top cops. And part of that honor is to come to the White House and have an opportunity to meet the president.
Mr. President, Dennis Mulcahy, we actually once met. It's been the last couple of days. As we were leaving, I walked down the hallway, and Kitty Higgins, who was Secretary of the Cabinet, who had been a prior host family, was walking up.
I knew Dennis, I knew the president, and I wanted to make sure that the president knew that this was just no ordinary top cop, that Dennis Mulcahy also had this brilliant idea to help advance peace and understanding in Northern Ireland.
So she said, oh, you have to come back in again. So she takes me from the group back into the Oval Office. The one thing about President Clinton, you know, if you had an opinion on something, he would listen. And I think if you're going to bring peace anywhere, you really have to listen to everybody.
He'd just been this heroic, almost legendary figure in the New York Police Department because of his work on the bomb squad. And all along, he and his wife have been doing this amazing work with no pay, all volunteer work. And I thought that he symbolized so much the hope that I had for the peace process, for what could happen.
That meeting with Dennis would help influence how President Clinton approached the whole issue of Northern Ireland.
I think President Clinton and Hillary Clinton picked up on the Mulcahy's because they know a good thing when they see it. They know when something, I think, accomplishes a number of things. It really pulls at the heartstrings of people.
For the first time in the 30-year conflict, there was now a significant American political will to try and end the fighting.
Having for so many years been allowed by America to carry on the route that the Brits believed was the only way, which was leave it to us and we'll sort it out, gradually began to change when the pressure on America to become involved became really unstoppable.
With the weight of the American president behind the fledgling peace process, it was a former Project Children child who would nearly derail the efforts.
We have another file here on a young man by the name of Thomas Begley. He traveled out here in 1983, stayed with a family in Long Island. Thomas also lost his life under somewhat different circumstances.
Quite simply, the IRA couldn't have picked a busier time to bomb the Shankill. It was shortly after 1 o'clock that two men wearing white coats walked into Frizzell's fishmonger's shop. They placed a box on the counter. There was no warning before the bomb exploded, demolishing the building. Dozens of people were injured, and it quickly became clear that many had been killed.
The final victim of the Shankill Road bomb attack has now been named. He was 22-year-old Thomas Patrick Begley, and it's believed he was one of the IRA bombers.
And we went, Thomas Begley? That was one of ours. That child was one of ours.
The owner of the fish shop, Desmond Frizzell, and his daughter Sharon are among the dead.
I'm left without a husband and a daughter. And that daughter, her husband, is left with a little girl of 2 years. 2-year-old baby. Now, what is he to think?
My wife was in her place of work. She was at the right place at the right time, not in the wrong place at the wrong time, which is quite often what is said here. She was exactly where she had to be on that Saturday afternoon. And Thomas Begley and Sean Kelly murdered her.
You look back and you say, you know, how we could change something, but really there was very little we could do. You know, he was selected to come out, and I'm sure there was a great need to get him out of there at the time.
There was no use targeting children who came from leafy suburbs, who didn't see the conflict, who weren't hurting. These children were hurting, and we were trying to give them a chance to say, I can have 6 weeks, I can mix with others, my parents can feel safe, but they have to go back to living their lives.
I still don't believe to this day that Thomas Begley and Sean Kelly were psychopaths, were evil people. I think that Thomas Begley and others like him were probably very vulnerable young men who, you know, were cannon fodder really for organisations the likes of the IRA.
From the moment it happened, this tragedy has seemed inexplicable. Why this at a time when Republicans seemed to be edging towards peace?
And it was like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And you did get discouraged. But I mean, you had to get up and say, no, I've got to keep going. If I don't do this, what's the alternative? We must move forward.
By the early 1990s, 13,000 children had travelled with the project. And despite the doubts created by Thomas Begley's actions, it was clear the initiative was having an effect on thousands of young minds.
When you come back having spent a summer with a Catholic family, and then you grow up in a paramilitarised area of North Belfast during the Troubles, and you hear Catholics referenced by your friends or by your family or by others in negative terms, in stereotypical terms. Having lived with these people, I was inoculated against that kind of mythic sectarianism. I didn't believe it. wasn't prepared to believe it. Because when they said Catholic, they had nobody in their mind. And when I heard Catholic, I saw this family.
Project Children, as much for me as it was about a friendship, it was also about an idea being planted in my head, a seed of there's something more than this.
President Clinton decided to directly intervene in Northern Ireland to try and establish a lasting peace process.
I became the first American president, sitting president ever to go to Northern Ireland. I stayed in the Europa Hotel in Belfast, which is the most bombed hotel in Europe. And then we went out and turned on the street lights. There were more than 50,000 people there that night. Nobody worried about a bomb. People were there standing next to others. Nobody knew what their faith or background or politics was.
On his official delegation was an NYPD cop, Dennis Mulcahy.
You get a guy like Dennis Mulcahy, everybody loves them. Republican, Democrat, whatever, they want to be around him. They want to hear what he has to say. They want to learn from him. They want to see if what he has, they can tap into.
We will stand with you as you take risks for peace.
By then, we'd had 20 years of people coming through that program. So an enormous number of young adults were living there who actually knew someone of another faith, another political persuasion. I think, you know, that makes a big difference in a small country.
The further shore of that peace is within your reach. Thank you, and God bless you all.
I don't think that without the involvement of America, and in particular, the personal intervention of President Clinton, we would have had a peace process.
On that trip, with the reception and the amount of people that turned out and the enthusiasm, it definitely was, I think it was the beginning of change.
Where we are today, 40 years on, is a far, far better place than where we were then. The next vital stage of our peace process is the work of reconciliation. Dennis has been involved in the work of reconciliation for a very, very, very long time, long before any of us.
We still have a few unresolved issues in Northern Ireland, but it's way better than it was. No one ever thinks it would be better to return to the violence. And I'll bet you a lot of the people who don't think that came here in his program and spent time when they were children with people of other faiths, other races, in a different culture. It all began with human contact. He gave them a chance to see the world in a different way. He gave them a chance just to be themselves in a natural way and not to be educated into foolishness.
Oh, it's an intervention. This kind of project is an intervention, and you need to intervene as early as you can in the life of a kid if you are to try to prevent that virus, that toxic virus of sectarianism or racism.
He was just a good man doing a good thing to help children. And he knew then that if he did it enough, he'd not only save some individual lives and create some different futures, but it might move the country.
What started with an initial group of 6 kids in 1975 stretched for over 40 years and gave 23,000 children from Northern Ireland a summer of peace in America.
Isn't it better to light a penny candle than to curse the darkness? When you light 23,000 penny candles, you have a massive light.
celebration kicks off along Fifth Avenue later this morning, and Craig Allen says the rain should be over by then.
The New York City St. Patrick's Day Parade is older than the country itself.
It started in 1762.
And this is the invitation. The envelope is always handwritten, you know, the invitations from the White House, which is very unusual today, and the presidential seal. You know, it is special. It's very special. St. Patrick's Day is a day where, you know, we celebrate our heritage, and it's maybe somewhat of a sad day. You know, you think back and the people that are no longer with us, and but it's special. It's a special day. Life goes on. The green tie, even though I'm not that big, and you know, it's nice a green tie, but we don't need anything green. Look, I say, look at my face is green, so the green is nice, but you can, you know, it can be overdone.
Remember the great Irish Americans of the past, those who struggled in obscurity, those who rose to the highest levels of politics and business and the arts. We celebrate the ideals at the heart of the Irish American story, ones that people everywhere can embrace: friendship and family and hard work and humility, fairness and dignity, and the persistent belief that tomorrow will be better than today. The story of the Irish in America is a story of overcoming hardship through strength and sacrifice and faith and family. The Irish did more than just build America, they helped to sharpen the idea of America. There are too many distinguished Irish and Irish Americans here tonight to mention, so I'll just offer 100,000 welcomes. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.
There you go, 40 years, huh?
My God, it still looks beautiful.
It is.
And this is where we had the interview?
Yes, it is.
This still looks the same. Belfast is like your ugliest child. It's the one you love the most.
Did you get along pretty well this summer with your buddy?
Yeah, we get on like brothers.
Huh?
Get on like brothers.
Like brothers, huh?